Hey, this is Jean Paul, and I am going to tell you about my Zeitgeist project. Alright, Zeitgeist means spirit of the time, and with the downfall of Rome, everything was degrading. Everyone moved into farms and language fell, since the barbarians could not read or write. And the quote says, "Constant war disrupted trade. Towns declined as Roman rule came to an end. Without the empire, there was no need for cities as centers of administration." Alright. Feudalism was a political and military system based on the holding of land. The control of land was the key for feudalism. With people holding and giving out land, people would feel secure under their knight, noble, or king, which would fight for each other, for they were held together by the land that they borrowed. During the years between 1000 and 1300, the state of the church improved dramatically. Religion spread more widely and deeply in society than before. Thousands of men and women became monks and nuns. At the end of the church, strong popes challenged the power of emperors and kings. With Christianity, everyone's mind was set on God and making sure everyone followed the rules right, so it tied everyone together. Greater amounts of food meant greater numbers of people. Scholars estimate that between 1000 and 1150, the population of Western Europe rose by 40%, from around 3 million to 42 million. And with an overabundance of food stock, people started to venture into towns and started new careers with this. They increased what was possible for them to do and found hope for the future. The personal bonds of loyalty that tied a vassal to a lord were the key to the feudal system. The oath sworn between them was the equivalent of today's written contract. People started to go by a system called the feudal system, and it was the only government that held during this time. With this system, people had a feeling of security. They would be safe since they were under protection of a ruler, who was under the protection of another ruler, and so on. This system dealt with the dealing of land and security for allegiance. The system they created was an exchange of property for personal service. The person who granted property was the lord or overlord. The person who received it was the vassal. The vassal promised service to his lord in a ceremony called the act of homage. But with protection, the vassals would pledge allegiance to their lord, and then the vassals would give land to knights for allegiance, and it would keep going down. So the vassal would have his knights fight for the king or lord. With this system, everyone would fight for the king because they were obliged to do so, and you would even need to give your life if that is what it would take to ensure the survival of the king. This system bound the people together militarily, and the church began to bind people together spiritually and politically. English theater began with what are called miracle plays, sometimes referred to as mystery plays. The aim of a miracle play is to dramatize an incident from the Bible. Morality plays, which came later, dealt with the human struggle between virtues and vices. Christianity was the only thing that made it through the collapse of Rome. It connected everyone together, and it was on everyone's minds, in war, literature, and government. Literature was based on Christian themes from the Bible. They took life as a Christian very seriously and followed all the rules. Those who were of thought to have drifted away from them were known as people committing heresy, and the church was very strict about doing that and would believe in even rumors. They would torture and question for weeks, for they did not want the heresy to spread. My modern connection I made was from the movie Season of the Witch. This movie was about two men's journey after the Crusades to deliver a witch to a special place to kill her, but they find that she was possessed by a demon. This I could relate to the time because the Pope did not want any kind of science or for fear it would take people away from God. This could be like the witch for many people who practiced science or showed signs of what looked like supernatural power, like healing, would be burned at the stake. But the witch in the movie was an actual demon. But later, Thomas Aquinas proved that science could build up what was in the Bible, and that both could exist without causing each other harm. In many ways, the popes who followed Gregory exercised greater power than any king or prince. As with Henry IV, a king who quarreled with the Pope faced excommunication, which freed all his vassals from their duties to him. The Church gained a lot of power when they started to anoint kings, for they could hold it over him. The king and the Pope constantly fought for power, but the Church constantly would win. So this gave the Church a lot of power, even enough for them to declare war. The year was 1095. The cursed race was the Seljuk Turks, who had recently stormed Baghdad, taken Jerusalem, and conquered all of Asia Minor from the Byzantine Greeks. The Byzantine Emperor Alexios appealed for assistance against the Turks. In response, the Pope called on the Knights of Christendom to join a crusade or military expedition to rescue Jerusalem and the Holy Land from the Muslim Turks. The Pope caused this war to show off his power and to unite the churches. The knights that fought in this war were there for glory in battle, and for earthly rewards that were tempting, and for rich plunder. One of the first great improvements in farming had begun in Charlemagne's time. A new heavier plow came to use. This heavy plow cut deep into the dirt and turned it over. And around 800, some villages began to organize their land into 3 great fields instead of 2. Farming was a big role after the collapse of Rome, since they needed to find a new way to get food with the Roman market gone and trade gone. People later made developments to farming that increased production. With these increased advances, it gave people hope to strive for something else besides farming. With this new plow, they could get more yield from their crops, and with the 3-field system, farmers could plant crops on 2/3 of their land instead of only half. And these new advances helped people make new kinds of jobs, and with these jobs were guilds, which was where a group of people would work at and master a specific skill. They would then teach apprentices, who could then master the skill also. In the 13th century, towns were becoming increasingly important in English life. The Crusades, a series of religious wars in the 12th and 13th centuries, had stimulated trade between Europe and the Middle East. As trade expanded, so did Europe's trading centers. The different guilds made up different towns, and they would trade objects that they made in what they called a fair. With all of this trade, it brought the people together, and they all had a purpose in the system of trade besides farming. They could start to live out their dreams, which would later lead to science. The end.